Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. And I am your host, Andrew DeCino. And I hope you are ready for a great GSMC Football Podcast today, because I am. And what are the segments on tap for today? You may be asking yourself. Well, for today, we are going to be talking about Antonio Brown. Where is he going to be playing in the 2021 season? We don't know that. He's still a free agent. In my opinion, he's still one of the best receivers in the league. And he is not signed by anyone yet. Where is he going to go? Next, we're going to be talking about the quarterback battle in New Orleans. Of course, we know that Drew Brees, the longtime New Orleans Saint, is no longer going to be quarterbacking for Sean Payton and that offense. Then that has been an offense that was clicking for many, many years, and now they're going to have a new quarterback. Time for some change. Similar to what New England had to face in 2020. Or are they going to manage just fine? We'll find out. Next, segment 3, we're going to be talking about Alex Smith. Alex Smith recently retired, the reigning comeback player of the year. Alex Smith came back from such a devastating injury, one that threatened his life, came back, brought a football team to the playoffs, and is now hanging them up. Congratulations to Alex Smith. We'll break down his career. And then lastly, time for some fun. So the NFL draft is coming up very, very soon. There are many teams that are going to be hopeful. That's what the NFL draft is. It's hope for all 32 teams because they're all at the same spot right now. They're all 0-0. And their future of the franchise could be waiting for them on that 3-day draft extravaganza. Could they find their next bright hope of the future? I'll say why maybe they shouldn't be as optimistic as they are. We're going to break down the last several first overall picks, and then we'll evaluate the 2017 and 2018 draft classes because those guys should be blossomed by now. Have they worked out or have they not? But let's just jump straight into it. Segment 1 is all about Antonio Brown. He caught a touchdown in Super Bowl 55, running a nice route against Tyrann Mathieu, beat him for a touchdown at the end of the first half that gave the Buccaneers an extended lead over the Chiefs. That made it very difficult for the Chiefs to come back in that one. But let's talk about Antonio, okay? So Antonio started off his career in Pittsburgh, drafted in 2010, went to Central Michigan, okay? I believe he was the 201st or 190 something, very close to Brady in terms of overall selection for draft pick. Okay, so those two were connected in where they were drafted. And Antonio, of course, drafted by Pittsburgh, pick 195, in case you were wondering. And by his second year, he was already selected to the Pro Bowl. The second year, he caught 69 balls and for over 1,100 yards. by his fourth year, 2013, he was over 100 catches. He was already at 110 for 1,500 yards. And then from there on out, it was 110 catches, 129, 136, 106, 101, 104. And then, of course, 2019 is kind of when things fell apart. He went to the Raiders, froze his feet off, then went to New England. Then they said, please don't text this person you are on in an ongoing investigation with, to which he continued to text and harass. And so then they got rid of him. In his cup of tea time with New England, he caught 4 passes on 8 targets, 56 yards, and a touchdown. Tom Brady, I think, did like him. He was rallying for Antonio to come to New England for the longest time. That 2019 team was a New England team that desperately needed offensive help. And for week 2, that was a team that had Julian Edelman healthy, Josh Gordon, Antonio Brown. I mean, those 3 guys that was a much, much different team than what you saw at the end, where it was literally just a hobbled Julian Edelman. Think about that team that went to Miami week 2, and I believe won 43-0, versus the team that was scraping it together against Tennessee in the wild card game. Very, very different team. And then, of course, his most recent year, Antonio Brown, that is, was in Tampa Bay. Played in 8 games, right? He came second half of the season. Caught 45 balls, 483 yards. So over the course of a 16-game season, he's, right around 90 catches, close to 1,000 yards. Okay. His yards per reception were down, granted. But this was his pretty much first time playing, and we could say he took all of 2019 off, and then he took half of 2020 off. So after a year and a half of not really playing, he really just kind of jumped right back into it. And, that's hard to do. And it's hard jumping from a Pittsburgh offense, which he knew for all those years, and then trying to learn this Tampa Bay offense on the fly. And, of course, his first game was in New Orleans on that Sunday night blowout, 38-3 as they lost. He caught 3 balls. Okay. Next game against Carolina, he got 7 balls. So he's kind of getting more in the flow. Then he caught 8 against the Rams. And they lost. And then against Kansas City is when the Tampa Bay team started turning everything around. And interestingly enough, Antonio against Kansas City only had 2 grabs. Then he went 5 the next week, 5 the next week, 4 the next week, and then 11 the last week. And then, of course, against Washington, he caught a touchdown. Against New Orleans, he only had 1 catch. Against Green Bay, he didn't travel. He was inactive with an injury. And then in the Super Bowl, he caught 5 passes. So where does Antonio Brown really fit into this Tampa Bay team, you may ask? Because you may look at it and you say, well, Antonio actually doesn't have a lot of production in Tampa Bay. And oftentimes the games that he does have a lot of production, they don't do well. Like the 8 balls that he caught against the Rams and they lost. Or the 7 that he caught against Carolina, and they did decently okay. So where does Antonio Brown fit? Of course, they have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller. Those are the 3 guys that were, Brady's top 3 receivers for the first 8 weeks of the season. And I was one that was pounding on the table saying, Brady actually loves this Scotty Miller guy. Because time and again, Scotty Miller, although he does not seem very big or, physically intimidating, he has wheels and he will beat you right down the field. And there are several long touchdowns that Scotty would catch. Great deep balls Brady would be throwing to him. And Brady seemed like he trusted him. So he would go to Scotty Miller time and again. And I'd be like, wow, he likes Scotty Miller. And guess what happened in the NFC Championship game when Antonio Brown was inactive? He went back to Scotty Miller. So it seemed like the trade-off was Antonio Brown for Scotty Miller, at least in my estimation. However, there seems to be a Brady and Antonio Brown connection, whatever it may be. I don't know. They seem to like each other a lot. That's great. Brady was pounding his fists for Antonio Brown in New England. He was pounding his fists for Antonio Brown to come to Tampa Bay. And I'm sure he's pounding his fists now for Antonio Brown to be re-signed again in Tampa Bay. And I think the only reason what is keeping Antonio from being right now back in Tampa Bay is that Antonio does want a little bit of a security. Similar to Brady, and the reason he didn't re-sign with New England was they wanted to go year to year with him. And that's an indication of trust. The Patriots didn't trust that Brady would be playing at a high level for multiple years in a row. Brady said, I bet you I can. Can you trust me? Give me multiple years on this contract. Show some trust. And of course, Antonio was year to year. It was a year-to-year deal, I think, with New England. And then he was released. And then with Tampa Bay, it was just a one-year deal. And the issue with Antonio Brown is not can he do it on the football field. I think he proved that. But it's can he behave himself. And I think so far he's proved that in Tampa Bay. So far no issues with Antonio in Tampa Bay. But I believe he does want some sense of security. Because for about a year and a half, he was making no money. And he realized, wow, I had a very lucrative deal in Oakland where I was scheduled to make $30 million guaranteed. And I blew that. I blew it. Now I'm looking around the league and I'm seeing all these wide receivers make $14, $15 million. And if I'm Antonio Brown, I'm thinking to myself, I'm better than these guys. I am. And I would agree, Antonio is better than those guys. And his production or statistics may not show it, but I believe that Antonio Brown on this Tampa Bay team, I think Mike, let's break down these receivers in Tampa Bay for just a moment. We'll start with Mike Evans. Mike Evans is awesome, I believe. Right? He's big. He can catch the jump ball so well. And in the red zone, you just throw him a fade and he's going to catch that. But from the 20 to the 20. I mean, listen, Mike Evans is awesome. Don't take this the wrong way. From the 20 to the 20, I would imagine that Brady looks more towards Chris Godwin. And that's who we'll talk about next, Chris Godwin. So yes, Mike Evans is awesome. And then get in the red zone and he's lethal. Chris Godwin, on the other hand, Brady said he has some of the best mitts he's ever seen. And oftentimes I would say Chris Godwin is the guy you look to, more of a possession receiver. He'll rack up the catches, whatever it may be. And then Antonio Brown, on the other hand, for a soon-to-be 44-year-old quarterback. I said last week, as you age as a quarterback, oftentimes you just go to guys who you implicitly trust. And I think Antonio Brown is becoming a guy that Tom Brady just implicitly trusts. And not that he's going to try and force him the ball. I think it's just that he trusts where he'll be. He trusts that he'll get open. And if I'm a defense, who do you focus on the most? So if you line up Antonio Brown in the slot, that's scary to me. Because, if I have a lockdown corner, I would assume you put him on like Mike Evans on the outside. And then I take my second guy and I try and find Chris Godwin or some kind of, man coverage on one side, zone on the other side. But what do you do with Antonio Brown? Antonio can run inside, outside, literally anywhere you want. So I just don't know how you account for him or who you put on him. We saw in the Super Bowl the Chiefs put Tyrann Mathieu on him on the goal line. That does not work. That does not work. Putting Tyrann Mathieu on Antonio Brown is not going to work. Putting most guys on Antonio Brown, honestly, is not going to work. So, one thing that I'd want to point out, Antonio Brown's probably best game of his regular season in Tampa Bay was Week 17 against the Falcons. He caught 11 balls, 138 receiving yards, and 2 touchdowns. And he was running everywhere on the field. You can look at Next Gen Stats, the chart of his route running. He was running behind the line of scrimmage, lining up in the slot left, slot right, wide left, literally everywhere. And I don't know how you cover Antonio. Antonio, to me, is still one of the premier receivers in this league. And some might say that Evans and Godwin are better. But think about Antonio's speed and quickness. Mike Evans has great speed. He has great deep ball running. And he can run a lot of things off of that. Antonio Brown has speed and is quick. So he can do the things that Julian Edelman does over the middle. And then he can do the things that, a speedster can do on the outside by just running right by you. That, I believe, is a game changer for the Tampa Bay offense. And if they can bring Antonio back, that offense remains, I think, one of the scariest in the NFL. Now, granted, if they don't bring Antonio back, you still have Scotty Miller, and I love Scotty Miller, and Brady trusts him. So this third guy, Evans, Godwin, the third guy has to be someone that Brady trusts. I believe that he trusts both Antonio and Scotty, but I believe that the connection is there with Antonio for some reason, whatever it is, maybe the understanding mutually between the two that I know we can help each other reach our mutual goals. Tom's is winning Super Bowls, and Antonio is returning to probably top receiver, top 3 in the league. And he knows that having the GOAT throwing him passes will help with that. What other team would take a risk in on Antonio Brown? Would Kansas City do that? Because Antonio has to go to a locker room where you basically have control over him. And for some reason, he will be on best behavior if Tom Brady is there. And I heard somewhere that Chris Sims was saying that maybe the Chiefs could take a risk on Antonio Brown as if they need any more help offensively. And you could say the same thing about Tampa Bay. Andy Reid's a very mature and experienced coach. It seems like the locker room is pretty sound there. You have veterans like Hill and Kelsey that can keep the playmakers from getting upset. And Andy Reid has dealt with other receivers in the past that, not to say they're divas, but have personality, such as Terrell Owens. And we all know that really didn't work out too well in Philadelphia with those two. So you could say that Andy Reid has had experience with those diva receivers, but not success with those diva receivers, interestingly enough. So, what does AB want? AB wants a contract that reflects trust. AB wants an offense that will get him yardage and receptions and return to form. Now, I think Tampa Bay will eventually reach a deal with Antonio, because last offseason, If you remember, Bruce Arians was saying, Antonio, he probably won't be here, doesn't fit in. But then when they signed him halfway through the season, for some reason the tune changed. And whether that be because guys weren't necessarily healthy, or finally Tom Brady just yanked their leg a little harder and said, hey, we need Antonio. We're going to need him. And they did, and it worked out well. Although it took a while for him to be immersed, it did work out. But obviously, without Tom Brady, Antonio Brown would not be in Tampa Bay. That is the Brady effect. So, does Antonio think that his best opportunity to get guaranteed of years and statistic production comes in Tampa Bay or elsewhere? You try and name a team where you think Antonio Brown could join and the locker room would have no fear of any turmoil or that he would blow up again. I did think he proved himself in 2020. Although the sample size is small, it was only 8 games, as well as the playoffs. So, my best guess is Antonio Brown returns to Tampa Bay. However, could we see him in another jersey? And Chris Sims thinks it would be the Chiefs. Personally, I do not. And I don't think Antonio Brown would want to either. Because even if they would offer him a more lucrative contract, we know that Brady wants to get Antonio the ball. But with Patrick Mahomes, he will get the ball to Hill, Kelsey, Hardman, Watkins. So, yeah, both teams have a ton of offensive weapons. But I believe because of the quarterback rapport he has with Brady, Brady will get him that football. Whereas Mahomes, I don't know. And Antonio is the guy that can line up in the slot. Hill is lining up in the slot already in Kansas City too. Although, yes, he can also play outside, whatever you want to say. But I think his best opportunity will be in Tampa Bay. And I think that's where he will be. Last week we talked about Julian Edelman in the Hall of Fame. Just looking at these statistics from Antonio Brown, I mean, you would imagine that he's going to have a Hall of Fame argument when he's all said and done. Although I don't think he's close to being all said and done. But just that streak of 2011 to 2018, only one season where he wasn't over 1,000 yards. 2 seasons. No, actually, 1, 2, 3, 4 seasons of over 1,400 yards. This is insanity. And all those seasons with 100-plus catches, Antonio Brown's. This is a guy you can't tell a story of the best receivers in the game in the 2010s without Antonio Brown. All right, after this commercial break, we're going to be getting into segment 2, which is going to be quarterback battle down in New Orleans. Of course, Drew Brees is retired. He's done. And so it's now the Taysom Hill show, is it? Or is it the Jameis Winston show? Who knows? We'll break that down. What does Sean Payton think of it all? Does he have an opinion? Does he have a preference? Who is he going to choose to be the starting quarterback week 1 of the 2021 season? That's after the commercial break. All right, stay tuned for that. I'll see you in just a moment.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Hello and welcome back from our intermission. We had a great first segment of the show. We talked about Antonio Brown, AB, as his nickname goes. And where is he going to be playing in the 2021 season? Because right now that man is a free agent. I'm sure Brady wants him back. I don't know if Arians does. I'm sure he thinks he can get it done without him, and I'm sure they can. But Antonio, an interesting little tidbit for you, is in the top 4 for non-quarterbacks wins above replacement in the playoffs. I know that was a mouthful, but in terms of WAR in the playoffs, Antonio Brown is 4th on the list for non-quarterbacks. Julian Edelman, number 1. All right, segment 2, we're going to talk about the battle of the quarterbacks down in New Orleans. And so for many years, it was Drew Brees, I'm sure as you all know. And Drew Brees has recently decided to call it quits on his great long career. So now the question is, who will be taking over the reins for the legendary Brees? Is it going to be Taysom Hill or is it going to be Jameis Winston? And so there's an old saying, or I guess a saying in recent memory, that for at least the Philadelphia Eagles, the backup quarterback position is one they value a lot, right? When they had Carson Wentz and they would need the backup quarterback, Nick Foles had to step in several times. Jalen Hurts came in and succeeded. So the backup quarterback's a very important position in Philadelphia, and I would say the same thing about the Saints. Because Drew Brees, he misses a couple games here and there, whether it's old age or not recovering as fast or, that thumb of his, couldn't grip the ball. And then, for example, Teddy Bridgewater has to step in. And then they can pound out 5 wins with Teddy Bridgewater. Or Taysom Hill steps in and they have a decent record without Brees. And so that would always beg the question, okay, so it looks like the Saints can get it done without Brees, right? They do have a lot of success without him, whether it was Teddy Bridgewater going 5-0 or Taysom Hill and company getting the job done. So they could manage. And the way that I heard Sean Payton speak about Taysom Hill a few months ago was referred to him pretty much as a nice car that you don't want to keep locked up in the garage. You want to unleash it. Because what good is the car if it's just in the garage all day? So that's the way that they look at Taysom Hill. You got this Swiss Army knife, a valuable offensive weapon. And so what good is he, and now you paid him as well, if you just keep him sitting around, No good for him to just sit around. And on the other hand, you just signed Jameis Winston as well. And Jameis Winston is the more stereotypical quarterback. Jameis Winston, of course, had his turnover problems. We all know that in Tampa Bay. But he did learn from someone who was known as one of the league's most accurate passers in Drew Brees. He got LASIK eye surgery, and I know we all joke about that, thinking, he just wasn't able to see defenders before, but we'll see. No pun intended there. So this begs the question, and think about this for yourself for a moment. Would you rather have Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston starting? And I think our answer might vary depending on if we take into consideration the contract for both players. Because you did pay Taysom Hill quite a few dollars. Taysom Hill, 4 years, $140 million. However, the 4 years are avoidable. similar to what Brady did. But for Hill, he's pretty much going to get $9.6 million signing bonus, $1.4 million roster bonus, and $1.03 million guaranteed base salary plus incentives. So it was basically help out the Saints and then get yourself some guaranteed money. So you did pay him a decent amount of guaranteed money, so you could say that is a sunk cost, and we should not consider that for our thought process. Then on the other hand, Jameis Winston, 1 year, $12 million. So they're right around, if you tally it all up, probably close to the same amount of money. But do we have a large enough sample size of Taysom Hill playing quarterback in a normal way? We remember that Saints-Denver game of last year where it was ugly because Denver wasn't starting a quarterback. They were starting that wide receiver from the practice squad who played like college and high school. And then Taysom Hill was kind of stinking up the place as well. And he's gimmicky, some might say. Jameis Winston, like I mentioned, turnover problems. What do you do about that? He's in a good offensive system. Sean Payton. But he is the more stereotypical quarterback. He knows the ins and outs of quarterbacking. He has a great arm. I don't know if it's inaccuracy for his interceptions or if it's just poor decision-making or a combination of both. So for Hill, I'm sure he had to face a lot of questions about, him not being your quote-unquote quarterback type of guy. So we said, he was asked about working out in the offseason as a full-time quarterback, knowing that Drew Brees is retired. So he said, quote, "For the last 4 years, my workout routine has been different. It's been structured to be the Swiss Army knife and do all these things I was going to be called upon to do. Where now my focus is being a full-time quarterback." So now we could think back the last couple of years. In 2018, Taysom Hill played only 10% of his snaps at quarterback, if you include special teams. And then in 2019, he only played 41 out of his 528 snaps at quarterback. So that's now less than 10%. And then, of course, last year, he was the number 2 guy. He started 4 games at quarterback and actually played more snaps at quarterback than he did at the other offensive positions. They went 3-1 with Taysom Hill. He had 8 touchdowns. So Taysom Hill, again, quoted as saying, "I think the mindset is different. Drew went down. You're called on to step in and do everything you can to not mess it up as a backup. That was my mindset. I think the mindset shifts when you become the guy. Last year, it was always a means to an end. Hey, when is Drew going to be healthy and when is he going to be ready? Because your time is then over." So I think it's a different mindset and something I'm looking forward to. And then Jameis Winston, on the other hand, he was quoted on saying he's working harder than anyone at his position. Winston said, "It's been tough, and there's going to be challenging days. I went from being the number 1 draft choice to being laughed at, but guess what? I'm about that business. I'm outworking everybody at my position. I'm doing things every single day. Commit to the dream, because that's the thing. We have to go back to being little kids about this football game, because this is a kid's game that men play." There we go. So now Winston making himself being heard, saying, "Hey, I'm working out. I'm outworking everyone, including you, Taysom Hill. I am outworking." So this is going to be interesting for sure over the course of the offseason, the course of training camps. Who's going to get the first team reps? Are they going to be split 50-50? Who's going to be playing those preseason games? Only 3 preseason games this year. Usually the third is reserved for the starter. It's kind of a dress rehearsal. Who gets that? Now, if you want my humble opinion on this, Hill did go 3-1. The way that Sean Payton talks about Hill is that he values him highly. And he's kept him around for a long time. Probably knows the system a little better. I would imagine that Hill gets the nod week 1. Now, if he puts up some poo-poo performances like he did against Denver, maybe there's going to be a short leash. But how short of a leash? So, like we said, Jameis Winston will be ready. He will be ready to pounce as soon as Taysom Hill falters. In the games that Hill started at quarterback, I keep mentioning the Denver game. Now, they won 31-3 because it was against a Denver quarterback who was a wide receiver. But Hill had a 43.2 rating. He threw a pick, no touchdowns, sacked 3 times. Just a bad performance. He had to rush the ball 10 times. And each of his 4 starts here were his rushing attempts. 10, 10, 14, 5. So, are you comfortable with your quarterback playing 16 games running the ball 10 to 14 times? You might, as long as you keep him safe. But, I mean, I'd be worried that some of these numbers are just kind of artificial playing against poor opponents. In his 4-game showing, it was a win against Atlanta, who was at the bottom of the bucket, a win against Denver, who started a wide receiver, a win against Atlanta again, in which they almost lost, but still it was Atlanta, and then Philadelphia got him. So, funny how we see they cleaned up on some poor opponents. Nothing about Hill was all that impressive. He should not be getting sacked 3, 2, then 5 times. Not once did he surpass 300 yards passing. So, yeah, they beat up on poor competition. I wouldn't say Hill went 3-1, so they should start him. All I'm saying is that I think Sean Payton looks at him very highly, and thus I think he will start. I think that Jameis Winston is a better quarterback, and I think Taysom Hill would probably be a lot more valuable in the Taysom Hill role, throwing and rushing and catching, filling up all 3 categories on the stat chart, pass, rush, receiving. I think he's much more dangerous there because I think the Swiss Army knife, if you take away the other gadgets, it's not like the main knife got any sharper. It's not like it's not, in my opinion, you didn't become a better thrower or quarterback just because you take him away from rushing, receiving. So I am in the camp of, let's give Jameis Winston a try here. It's at least my thought. Sean Payton, he said, quote, the approach will be the same. Whether it, moving on from Breeze and whether you're going to go with Hill or Winston. To me, that's a ridiculous statement. How is the approach the same that it's ever been? Because the approach with Breeze was you can't throw the ball deep. You had to run trick plays to throw the ball deep. If you remember against that Tampa Bay divisional game, it was Jameis Winston throwing a deep pass on a trick play because Drew Brees can't throw it deep. With Hill, you're rushing the ball 10 times or 14 times at quarterback. Are you running Winston 14 times if he's your quarterback? Or did you run Breeze 14 times if he's your quarterback? No. So the approach is most definitely not the same. He says, quote, "We've got a good core group of young, talented players that have won a lot of games and have experienced that taste of the postseason. I think you build your team around that. Is there an elevated level of excitement? I think it's the same." I don't know. I just think that's an inaccurate statement by Payton. It's not the same. You saw the limitations of that offense with the Breeze. It had to be short, and almost inside because he couldn't hit outside the numbers either. Winston can. The only thing that's probably holding him back from Winston is the uncertainty as to what you will get. I think the offense is also limited with Hill. So, with Hill, I think you can beat up on the ragdolls in the league. I'm sure if you start Hill, you could somehow compile a 10-6, or, well, now 17 games, 10-7 record, 11-6. With Winston, I think there's a lot more potential just because of what you can do on offense. But you do not know what you're going to get. You don't know if you're still going to get the Winston that'll turn the ball over 4 times. So I think with Hill is probably a safer option. You're going to get between 9 and 11 wins. Winston, I think the range is just a lot bigger. So who knows? That's going to be fun to see in the weeks to come for sure. Now, the Saints won the NFC South last year. Are we going to see a different division champion? The Buccaneers are favored to get back to the Super Bowl again in the NFC. Has the reign of the Saints as champions of the South come to an end without Breeze? I'm surprised it didn't come to an end last year. And the only reason it did not come to an end is because of the slow start that the Buccaneers had and the shaky uncertainty and streakiness. It reminded me a little bit about the Miami Heat, the Big Three, when they first came together. It took them a season to get it together. Yeah, they went to the finals and they lost to the Dallas Mavericks. The next year they came back and figured it out. And same with the next year. I'd say this Buccaneers team did so much on the fly to figure everything out. They didn't waste time. They could have gotten a free pass. They could have went there 11-5, won against Washington, and then, if they lost to the Saints again for the third time, the excuses would be, well, this team's just still getting it together. They're all new. You brought in Brady, Brown, Fournette, and Gronk, and you had to immerse them into the offense. It was a struggle of power between Arians and Brady, and they just had trouble figuring it out. And they did through 12 weeks of the season. That was the story, and that was the excuse that I was giving them. And I was always saying it was just a matter of time because they need to find the answers. They need to be cohesive with their offensive attack. And then when the offensive group clicked, so did the defense. Byron Leftwich did an awesome job. So they did a great job of learning on the fly, and then you saw they just tallied off 8 in a row and said, look at us figure this out. And you wonder, can they continue it on into the 2021 season? All indicators would say, yeah, why not? Why can't they continue it? So I think the Buccaneers will be NFC South champions. That's, I guess, my early prediction. And then the Saints, where do they fall in the division? Because the Panthers, are they going to get a quarterback? Could ask the same thing about the Falcons. The Falcons are in between reload and reboot. Get a quarterback or get the skill guys to try and make one last push here. It's going to be an interesting NFC South, but I think one thing's for sure, and again, there's no certainty in the NFL. Buccaneers, I understand why they're favorites. They're going to be good. We talked about Antonio Brown in the first segment. That's the only question. Are you going to get AB back or no? But either way, I think they're going to be really, really dangerous. And I think they're not going to miss a beat. They're going to come back firing. So, some interesting things to look out for in the weeks to come. And recently, Alex Smith hung it up, retired. Congratulations to Alex Smith. We'll be talking about that in the next segment. And then in the final and fourth segment, we're going to be talking a little bit about the draft and what should history be telling us about the hopes and dreams for these teams in the future. Stay tuned, and we'll see you shortly.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. I am your host, Andrew DeCino, and we are about to jump right into segment 3 where we will be talking about Alex Smith. And Alex Smith recently retired. That is going to be the theme of this next portion. Now, what did we talk about in the previous 2 segments? Well, we talked, of course, first about Antonio Brown and where he will fit in if he decides to join another team besides the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then we, of course, got into Tampa Bay's rival down south, New Orleans Saints. Drew Brees retiring. So what does that mean for their quarterback situation? What does Sean Payton think? Are Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston feuding? They might be. I think Jameis Winston ultimately will be the better quarterback, but I think for now Taysom Hill will get the nod. I think he will get the reps in training camp, and I think he will get the opening day start. Mark my words right now. Segment 3 now, we're going to be talking about Alex Smith, and he is hanging them up. So Alex Smith, in his career, well, he started off in San Francisco. He was drafted in 2005. Brought the 49ers some great success. Got them some wins. Had a successful record with the 49ers. He was 2 games above 500. He had 2 more wins than losses, 38, 36, and 1. And I think all accounts, everyone would say Alex Smith did well in San Francisco. And well enough to earn a job elsewhere. And the reason he had to move on to go play somewhere else, even though in his final season in San Francisco he went 6-2, 6-2-1, with a 70% completion rate, was because he was replaced by Colin Kaepernick. And Colin Kaepernick brought that San Francisco team to a Super Bowl. So Smith starts, helps turn around a franchise, even goes 13-3 in 2011, and then is replaced the following season, and his replacement gets them on the brink of a Super Bowl victory. One pass away. So then he goes to Kansas City and unites with Andy Reid. And boy, was that a fantastic match. Andy Reid trusts him and says, you know what? You're going to be a Pro Bowler in 2013, and we're going to sling this ball, because I think you can sling this ball, Alex Smith. You never really threw it that much in San Francisco. They really held you and reserved you for some reason, whatever it was. They kept him almost as a, very, very strict game manager. In 7 years with the 49ers, he attempted 2,100 passes. In 2 fewer years with Kansas City, he threw 200 more pass attempts. And this is reflected in the 2013 season, his first Pro Bowl year of his career. He threw the ball 500 times. He racked up an 11-4 record. And you know what Kansas City's record was before Smith arrived to Kansas City? 2-14. And by the way, do you know what San Francisco's record was before Alex Smith was drafted? 2-14. And so a team that went 2-14, let's start with the 49ers, in 2004, Alex Smith comes in and goes 38, 36-1. I'd say that's a big improvement. And now you go to a team, Kansas City, and in 2012, we just said they're 2-14. And what was his record in Kansas City? 50-26. And he racked up 3 Pro Bowls. His best season, I believe, although the record doesn't show it, was 2017. He went 9-6, completed 67.5% of his passes, threw for 4,000 yards, 26 touchdowns to only 5 picks. And he actually led the league in adjusted yards gained per pass play. Led the league. He also led the league in passer rating. In 2017. So, you know what he did? First game of the season. The New England Patriots are dropping their banner that said 28-3 everywhere. Greatest Super Bowl comeback, probably greatest comeback of all time. They're going against the GOAT. GOAT turned 40 about a month before. And what does he do? He goes into New England and stomps on that parade and says, no celebration for you. I'm going to show you, defending champions, what's up. And so the story of Alex Smith's career seems a little circular right now, because he takes a team that is atrocious. He does great things for them. He did good things for San Francisco, and he did great things for Kansas City. And what happened to Alex Smith? Well, they drafted Patrick Mahomes. And in 2018, they were ready to move on from Alex Smith. Understandably, because Alex Smith only got you so far. But he did turn around that franchise. Franchise was, very laughable before Alex Smith got there. Especially the year prior. 2-14 is embarrassing. Actually embarrassing. And then Alex Smith comes in and boom, there you go. Playoff team. We're going to go 11-4, 8-7, 11-5, 11-4, 9-6. And then Patrick Mahomes comes and then takes them a step further. So his replacement then goes and gets into the Super Bowl, wins the Super Bowl. Then he goes to Washington. Goes 6-4, 2018. And then, of course, had that horrible, horrible injury. Life-threatening injury. Leg infected. In and out of a coma. Doesn't remember like a month plus of him being in the hospital. Everything fuzzy, everything dizzy. Has a miraculous recovery. Miraculous recovery just to be walking again. To have his life. And then decides, you know what? I'm going to go play football again. Because I can. I can do it. And so he takes that Washington football team. Goes 5-1. Beats the then undefeated Pittsburgh Steelers. Takes the Washington football team to the playoffs. And then was replaced by the backup Heineke in the playoffs. Alex Smith, a remarkable career. A remarkable comeback. One comeback player of the year. Very, one of the most deserving players to ever win that award. So, but Alex Smith, in my opinion, deserves more than what he was given here. Turns around franchises. Gets replaced. Moves on to another team. Turns them around. Is replaced. Then moves to another team again. Turns them around. Is replaced. So Alex Smith retiring. Congratulations to Alex Smith on a great career. And one of the quotes that he said upon retiring was, quote, 2 years ago, I was stuck in a wheelchair, staring down at my mangled leg, wondering if I would ever be able to go on a walk again, or play with my kids in the yard. On a routine play, I almost lost everything, but football wouldn't let me give up, because no, this isn't just a game. It's not just what happens between those white lines on a Sunday afternoon. It's about the challenges and the commitments they require. It's about how hard and how far you can push yourself. It's about the bond between those 53 guys in the locker room and everybody else in the organization. It's about fully committing yourself to something bigger, end quote. That's a great, great message from Alex Smith. And I completely understand why he wanted to come back and play football. A lot of people would be like, oh my God, you just got lucky with still having your life or still having one of your limbs after a gruesome injury. And now you want to go play that game again, which has an 100% injury rate? You must be crazy. And I'm telling you, I am sure his family was beyond nervous. And at the end of the day, I'm sure Smith might have been a little nervous. But I think being able to look at this and say, hey, you might have knocked me down, but you couldn't keep me down. I don't think Smith wanted to just recover from his injury and retire right away. I think he wanted to say, yeah, you might have got me once, but you couldn't keep me out. Look at me going 5-1. You know, good for Alex Smith. It really is more. a mental challenge more than anything. Because he didn't need to come back and play football. We knew the type of quarterback he was. Knew he was a great player in this league. Winning comeback player of the year. And then calling it quits. I think that's a great way to head off. Great career. Andy Reid was talking about when if Alex Smith wants to get into the coaching game, that he would want him first. And that kind of shows the type of mental attitude, the understanding of the game that Alex Smith has. And you look to that peak of his career in Kansas City with Reid, speaking of, those 5 years were probably his best years of his career. But I'd say the most memorable ones were his last 3 with Washington. I mean, that was, life-changing. And, it's just, it really does show the mental toughness that someone has to be willing to put yourself through that, all the hard training to get walking again, and then say, yeah, I'm walking, but I want to do more. I want to play. So good for Alex Smith. And so now, and again, one last congratulations to Alex Smith. Now you take a look at the Washington football team. What are they going to do from here? Because you got Heineke and you have Fitzpatrick. Heineke, boy, with the hype was around him was so large when he hosted Tom Brady in a wild card round game. And he put on the show and game of his life. Good for him. And I think everyone after that was saying, holy crap, where did this Heineke guy come from? He separated his shoulder diving for a touchdown. Kept playing. And I'll be honest, as a Tampa Bay fan, I was worried that entire game because this Heineke guy could do a lot of things. He was avoiding sacks. He was dropping dimes. He was quick. He knew what he was doing. And I think from there, he, obviously Washington gave him a contract, and then they gave Fitzpatrick a contract as well. So I think they have some questions to answer for themselves. Who will be the quarterback in Washington? You know what you're going to get with Fitzpatrick, but I think Heineke could add some excitement there. I'd lean and go Heineke if I'm Washington, just because how many people could be put into that situation where you're playing against the GOAT in a playoff game and hold your own and not get nervous? That shows a lot. We talk about mental toughness with Alex Smith. It shows a lot of toughness for Heineke not to let the moment overwhelm you. I thought that was really cool. So Washington obviously competing in the NFC East. Are they the favorites? Because they were the reigning division champion. Because you have Dallas coming back now with Dak Prescott. The Giants, and who knows what we're going to get with them, to be honest. Who knows? You have the Eagles with Jalen Hurts. Now, the NFC East for the last several years has just not been a good division. It seems like for a few years now in a row, the winner just does not need to compile a lot of wins to win the division. And a wild card will never come out of the East in the NFC just because they eat each other up, and really the only wins they get are against each other. But in my opinion, I'm really psyched to see Jalen Hurts start a full season. I'd like to see Dak Prescott come back now. He could have a claim at comeback player of the year. I think the Giants might be bottom of the barrel. If my predictions, and these are the way too early predictions, I would go Eagles at the top of the division. I'd go Cowboys right there behind them. And I would go Washington somewhere after that. And then the Giants at the bottom. That's the way I have it. So, that is how I think the NFC East will go. I would have liked to see, another full season with Alex Smith as Washington's quarterback. I think he deserved that. But I think Alex Smith was saying that they were almost kind of pushing him out near the end. And as remarkable of a career Alex Smith had and a comeback he had in 2020, we were hearing whispers saying that there are limitations in that offense because of him. The drive and strength of his throws, not the same. Alex Smith in Kansas City, he had the threat of running. He did. He could run that football. And obviously after the injury, that's just, that was not the case. He's not going to run with that leg of his. But Washington does have a good football team. Philadelphia has a good football team. And Dallas, I don't think they have a good football team, but they have Dak. And I trust Dak. I believe in Dak. So, very interesting to see what's in store for the NFC East this year. A lot of people call it the NFC least for their lack of success, their lack of wins. But this is a good segue into the next topic. Why are we so interested in the NFC East? Why is there hope in the NFC East? Jalen Hurts, Taylor Heineke, Dak Prescott, Daniel Jones. These are young guys. Where do you get these young guys from? The NFL draft. That's your hope. Your hope is getting a nice young quarterback that could be your franchise. And during the draft, everyone's hopes are sky high because your season could be anything. You could have, look at the Browns. They go from winless to a playoff team beating the Steelers. That, or you could draft a guy like Jamarcus Russell, who is a bust. So a lot of hope and a lot of potential sky high, and results are uncertain. But one thing's for certain, we will get right into that segment after this commercial break.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Andrew DeCino. And time to get into the fourth segment. It's a fourth segment on a Friday. Not Friday for me, but Friday for you. Hope it's all going well with you all, because we have a fun segment to talk about. And of course, I'm sure you've been tuning in with us thus far and heard all about the wonderful things we were talking about, like Antonio Brown, like the Saints, Jameis Winston, and Taysom Hill, and Sean Payton. And then in segment 3, we talked about Alex Smith and retiring, and congratulations to him. And now we're going to talk about an interesting segment. This is about the draft here. So everyone always says the draft is a time where all the football teams, they're at square one. There's a lot of hope. You could be the Browns. You could be winless. And you're one or two picks away from changing your football team. You're a Baker Mayfield and a Nick Chubb away from completely changing your offense forever. From being a desolate team to being a playoff team. You could be like the Buffalo Bills and find your guy, Josh Allen. 3 years in. Now going to be 4. Absolute stud. Took a team that, you got to the playoffs in 2017 with Tyrod Taylor. But again, we've been talking about limitations of offenses all episode long. And Tyrod Taylor, very limited in what he can do compared to Josh Allen, where the ceiling is honestly sky high with him. They went 13-3 and went to the AFC Championship game. That should be the way that I see Josh Allen play. That's baseline for the Buffalo Bills. I don't want to speak too early, but that is what I am seeing. So, again, a lot of hope for teams drafting early. The Jaguars have the first overall pick. Almost everyone is assuming that it will be Trevor Lawrence. So, is Trevor Lawrence going to turn around that franchise? Do first-round picks completely turn around a franchise? You could say so. We've seen good examples in the past. Peyton Manning, drafted by the Colts, completely turned the Colts around. Right, took them, a year or two. But then I'm looking through this list of first overall picks. Some changed the franchise, some did not. Like Drew Bledsoe in 93. He did very well for the Patriots. Tim Couch did nothing for the Browns. Carson Palmer. Awesome. That right there is a fantastic draft choice. Followed by Eli Manning, who probably changed the course of 2 franchises, both the Chargers and the Giants. Because, he just did not want to play for the Chargers. Thus come in Drew Brees, so on and so forth. Alex Smith, we had a whole segment on him, drafted by the 49ers. 49ers were 2-14 before Smith. Changed them. Went to the Super Bowl a few years later. Mario Williams was great. And then let's talk about quarterbacks, because we had a streak of 4 years when there were quarterbacks taken first overall 4 years in a row. Matthew Stafford in 2009. Yes, he changed a team that went 0-16 to obtaining wins. But how... Now Matthew Stafford's awesome. And we'll see what he can do in Los Angeles for the Rams now that he's traded. But at the end of the day, ask yourself, would the Lions have made the same decision drafting Stafford in 2009, knowing it would result in no success? If you think about it, big picture, right? Where the playoff wins were, the Super Bowls, whereas, you had 2009, 10, 11. You had over a decade plus to get it done with your guy, and he didn't. And, of course, that is a detriment to what the team surrounded him with, whether it's coaching, whether it's talent, you name it. But he didn't get it done. So an 0-16 team did have a ton of hope. And I would say they were satisfied and happy, and I'm sure grateful of Matthew Stafford because they know it was not his fault. But if you're sitting there at 0-16, 2008 as a fan, and you say, hey, we're going to draft a quarterback with the first overall pick, but we're not going to win a Super Bowl we're not going to win a Super Bowl in the next 12, 13 years. Like, does that make you happy? Does getting 4 to 7 wins a year make you happy? Now, I know I'm being a very, huge pessimist here. Go to Sam Bradford. Next quarterback in 2010, first overall pick. What did he do for that team? What did the Rams benefit? Because only 6 years later, they had to choose a different quarterback. So, we don't need to spend a lot of time on Sam Bradford and the Rams. But how about the Carolina Panthers? In 2011, drafting Cam Newton. Won Rookie of the Year in 2011. Won MVP in 2015. Brought the Panthers to a Super Bowl. And then did not win. And then after that, injury kind of derailed his career in Carolina. He left, and we all know the story now. He's in New England. So that career got off to such a hot start. I think he threw for like 400 yards in his first game. But I'm talking about even the first few years of Cam Newton's career were hot. And he was awesome. He was Super Cam. And I loved Cam. I still like Cam now, but there's something about early year Cam in Carolina. Like when he was ripping off. He was a Pro Bowler in 2011 and 2015. He was, ripping off 4,000-yard seasons. He was running that rock. I thought it was a lot of fun what Cam Newton could do. And then rushing the football too. Insanity. Like over 100 rushes every year from 2011 to 2015, through 2015. And then in 17 and 18, he was over 100 rushes, over 500 yards in, all those years that I mentioned. So Cam Newton, you think about this. A lot of thunder going on in the background, by the way. A lot of thunder. They're thundering over Cam Newton, I think, is what's going on. And so if I'm a Carolina Panthers fan, and, I ask myself, well, what was the Panthers' record in 2010? The year before we drafted Cam Newton, if I'm a Panthers fan. Well, we were 2-14. No wonder we had the first overall pick. So now we draft Cam Newton. I have a lot of hope with the first overall pick. Maybe we could actually do something. And so, yeah, I am excited. And so would you ask yourself in hindsight, was drafting Cam Newton worth it to go from 2-14 to 5 years later being on the brink of winning a Super Bowl and having a quarterback to win 2 Pro Bowls for us in his time here and winning an MVP and All-Pro and you name it. However, it resulted in no Super Bowls. So, that was a big thunder. I wonder if you heard that. Went 75-63. with Carolina. Or, no, sorry, 68 and 55. I beg your pardon. 68 and 55 with Carolina. So, yeah. I think that's comparatively out of the two previous we just mentioned, Matthew Stafford, Sam Bradford, and Cam Newton. Although none won Super Bowls, the biggest success so far, to me as a fan, Cam Newton, right? He changed the trajectory of that franchise. And then follow that up 2012 with Andrew Luck. That is one heck of a story. Because again, the Colts literally were, the phrase was, suck for luck. They were trying not to win games. And it was very, very easily seen they were literally not trying to win games. And you're like, really? You're doing all this just so you can get Andrew Luck? But yeah, they were doing it just so they could get Andrew Luck. And Andrew Luck was fantastic. You go to the playoffs. You get to the wild card round. Next year, you go to the divisional. The next year, you go to the championship game. And then injuries derailed Andrew Luck, of course. Still a fantastic quarterback he was even throughout those injuries. And then eventually he had to retire because he did not want to face that abuse over and over. And Andrew Luck is such an intellectual, knew that there was more for him besides football. And I knew the saying was, get your 10 years and get out. And now the saying is, get your 10 million and get out of the NFL, that is. Andrew Luck accumulated much more than that in his career. But still, he got out. He loves his brain. He loves his body and says, I have more to offer than just playing quarterback. But still, if I'm the Colts, you go from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck, that's not so bad. So drafting an Andrew Luck, I'd say, yeah, worth it. Even though it didn't result in a Super Bowl, which again is the ultimate success and goal for every single team there is, it changed the football team. It changed wanting players to go to your football team. And I'd say overall, yeah, that first overall pick, worth it. And let's stay on the quarterback path here. Jameis Winston and Jared Goff, I'd say both of those unsuccessful. Although the Rams could claim more success because they did get to the Super Bowl with Goff in 2018. However, they moved on from Goff because they didn't think they could get it done. And obviously the Buccaneers gave it a try in 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19. They went all 5 years with Winston and then they finally said that's enough is enough for the interceptions. We have to move on from you and give it a try with Tom Brady. And they did, and they got it done right away. Rams, of course, moving on from Jared Goff, and now they're with Matthew Stafford. So if I'm the Rams, yeah, I had a terrible time before Goff, and now Goff made me kind of relevant for a few years. But again, no Super Bowl win. Go to Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, 3 in a row. If I'm the Browns, Baker Mayfield absolutely was worth it. And still, that I think is a success. The hopes and dreams of a franchise turned around because of him. Kyler Murray, I'd say the book is still out. But from all indications, Kyler Murray does seem pretty good. And I think it's too soon to tell. And if I'm the Bengals, I'm ecstatic with Joe Burrow right now. And he seems to be doing well off of recovering from his injury. I would be pumped if I'm the Bengals. So we say to ourselves, should every team think that, I have the first overall pick, I should be super hopeful. Oh, I have a high first round pick, I should be super hopeful too. You don't know with the draft. You don't know because we saw examples of yes and no. I mean, look at the Jets over the course of all these years. They got Sam Darnold and they thought they had a hope. Or even the Cardinals in 2018. They got Josh Rosen. They thought that was a great hope. But it turns out no. So you can't guarantee hope or success based on first-round picks. New England in that 2018 draft will stick there. Isaiah Wynn and Sony Michel. Those aren't game-changing players, but they're both first-round talents. And so sometimes you have to ask yourself, what's the probability of us striking gold with a first-round pick? Let's stick with the 2018 draft right now because these guys are entering their fourth year. I think that the tape is out on them. We know what we have with them. Baker Mayfield, I'm pumped if I'm the Browns. That's a great success. Saquon, great success. Darnold, bust. Denzel Ward, he's done pretty good for himself. Bradley Chubb's been great. Quentin Nelson is a freaking all-pro. Josh Allen could win MVP. And then, yeah, flip the switch. Josh Rosen, bust. I'm looking through some of these names. You know? Leighton Vander Esch, you're happy if you're the Cowboys. Jair Alexander, you're happy if you're Green Bay. I don't think I'm happy if I'm New England with Sony Michel and Isaiah Wynn. I don't think I'm happy if I'm Seattle with Rashad Penny. I haven't heard much of Mike Hughes with Minnesota. So it is not a guarantee. And why don't we go back one draft even prior, 2017? Because now we really know if these guys have worked out or not. Myles Garrett, yeah. Mitchell Trubisky, not so much. Solomon Thomas, not so much. Leonard Fournette, not so much. Corey Davis, yeah, he's a starter in this league. He's good. I'd say Jamal Adams, superstar. Mike Williams, I'd say the tier above Corey Davis. Christian McCaffrey, stud. John Ross, not so much. Now you get into Patrick Mahomes, the Marshawn Lattimores, the Deshaun Watsons. Boom, boom, boom. Fantastic. And then you kind of look through it. O.J. Howard, yeah, he's really good. Injured. I'm still waiting to see him. Gerard Davis, is he doing good in Detroit? Jabril Peppers, I think they might have expected more from him, but he seems to be he's just a starter in this league. Trey White, awesome. Taco Charlton, you expect more from him. TJ Watt, stud. So first-round picks don't guarantee you flipping the switch or changing the status of your franchise. But it gives you hope. It gives you hope. And that might be all that matters. Draft's coming up in a few days. By the time you're listening to this, probably about a week. So if you're the Jaguars, if you're the Jets, if you're the 49ers, the three teams we know are going to be taking quarterbacks, don't expect your franchise to flip the switch. It could, but it may not. Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and then either is it going to be Justin Fields, is it going to be Mac Jones, or is it going to be Trey Lance? Those are your five quarterbacks. Who's going to go top three, and who will change that franchise? Because we know, based off of probability, someone will change the franchise, and someone will be a bust. And you want to take the 2018 draft class as an example. Baker changed franchise. Baltimore is a great franchise, so it's not like he changed it that much. But Lamar, yes, he's a successful quarterback. I have more thoughts on him as a passer, but that's for another episode maybe. And then Josh Allen, boy, I don't even need to mention him because he is just an MVP. He's changed Buffalo. Knock on wood, for like the next 15, 20 years. That's the type of quarterback that Josh Allen is. But then you have your busts, Darnold and Rosen. So, who's going to be the studs and who's going to be the duds? You want my prediction? Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, studs. studs. Mac Jones, Trey Lance. That's my prediction. We can break it down even more next episode if you want, but that's my bold prediction for this episode. If you're a team of any football, if you're a fan of any football team, have some excitement for the NFL draft. A franchise player could fall into your lap, or they might not, but at least have that hope. And enjoy your Friday and have hope for this weekend. That it's going to be a great one. If you're listening to this, you know it's going to be a great one. It's already been a great start to your Friday, or end to your Friday, or any day it is, because we are having this football discussion together. And that is all I have for you. And as always, thank you for listening to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the good folks at the GSMC Podcast Network. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, thank you. Again, what do I always say every episode? Tweet me. I dare you to tweet me. I'll respond. I'll respond so fast you don't even know. So fast. Do it. Enjoy your weekend. Love you guys.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.